Tell me something, girl. Are you happy in this modern world?
Did you know there's a song that was written in just 10 minutes, but took a lifetime to be born? A song that almost never existed because two artists were terrified of each other? Lady Gaga cried for hours after recording Shallow, but not for the reason you imagine. This is the real story behind the song that changed two careers forever, and almost destroyed one of them in the process. What you're about to discover will completely change the way you listen to this song. It was December 2016. Bradley Cooper was sitting alone in his New York apartment, surrounded by piles of rejected scripts and a half-empty bottle of whiskey. For 3 years, he'd been trying to make A Star Is Born happen, and every studio said the same thing: you can't direct, you can't sing, give up. But Bradley had a secret no one knew. Since childhood, he would hide in the bathroom to sing because he was ashamed of his own voice. At 41, he still felt the same tightness in his chest from when he was 8 years old, and his mother caught him singing alone and laughed. That cold December night, he was watching a YouTube video for the 100th time. It was Lady Gaga singing La Vie en Rose at a charity event. Something about that performance hypnotized him. It wasn't just the voice. It was the raw vulnerability she exposed without fear. She sings like someone who's already died 1,000 times, he murmured to himself. The next day, Bradley did something that changed everything. He called Lady Gaga's personal phone directly, a number he'd gotten through a mutual friend. When she answered, he said only, "I need to meet you. It's not about fame. It's about pain." Lady Gaga, at the time still recovering from the commercial failure of art pop and dealing with fibromyalgia, almost didn't go to the meeting. She was at her Malibu home, staring at the phone, trembling, not from nervousness, but from physical pain. The episodes had gotten worse, and some days she could barely get out of bed. Just another actor wanting to use me as a curiosity, she thought, throwing the invitation in the trash. But her mother, Cynthia, found the crumpled paper. "Stefani," she said, using her real name, "you can't give up on dreaming just because you're afraid to dream again." The meeting happened at Bradley's house in February 2017. When Gaga arrived, she was wearing an oversized hoodie and sunglasses, trying to hide not just her face, but her wounded soul. Bradley opened the door, and the first thing he said was, "Take off the glasses. I want to see your eyes when you sing." She hesitated. Her eyes were red from her latest pain episode, swollen from crying alone all night. But something in his voice made her trust. What happened in the next 45 minutes changed two lives forever. Bradley sat at the piano, a piano he had bought but never had the courage to play in front of anyone, and began to play some notes. It was a melody he'd carried in his head for years, but never dared turn into music. Gaga slowly approached. When she began to hum along, Bradley felt something he hadn't felt since childhood, the sensation of being home. 3 months later, on a sweltering May afternoon in Los Angeles, Bradley, Gaga, and composers Mark Ronson and Andrew Wyatt had been stuck in a studio for 6 hours. Nothing was working. They had melodies, they had chords, but they had no soul. Bradley was frustrated, pacing back and forth. "It needs to be about fear," he kept repeating. "The whole movie is about two people who are afraid to dive too deep." That's when Gaga, almost whispering, said, "What if the song is about being in the shallow part, but wanting to go deep?" Silence filled the studio. Andrew Wyatt picked up the guitar and started playing a simple progression. Bradley sat at the piano and joined him. Gaga closed her eyes, and suddenly the words began to flow, as if they had been waiting inside her for years. "Tell me something, girl. Are you happy in this modern world?" In 10 minutes, the basic structure of Shallow was ready. But none of them knew they had just created what would be considered one of the most powerful ballads of the last 20 years. The recording of the final version of Shallow happened on an August night in 2017. It was 2 a.m. and everyone should have gone home, but Bradley was obsessed with capturing something specific. The feeling of two people meeting for the first time through music. Gaga was exhausted. They had recorded the song 47 times. Yes, Bradley counted each one. Her voice was hoarse, her feet hurt from the high heels she wore to get into character, and she just wanted to go home. "One more time," Bradley asked. "I can't anymore," she replied with tears in her eyes. "My voice can't take it." That's when Bradley did something unexpected. He approached her and said, "Then don't sing for the cameras. Don't sing for the movie. Sing for me. Like we're two people who met 5 minutes ago and are discovering we don't want to be alone." They positioned themselves face to face in the center of the empty studio. No cameras, no producers, no pressure. Bradley started playing the guitar, looking directly into her eyes. What came out of that recording, the 48th attempt, was pure magic captured in 3 minutes and 35 seconds. When they finished, both remained silent for almost a full minute. Gaga was crying, but this time it wasn't from frustration. It was from relief. "I think we got it," Bradley whispered. But the story of Shallow was just beginning. In the following months, as filming for A Star Is Born continued, something strange began to happen. Bradley and Gaga developed a connection that went beyond professional. It wasn't romantic. Both of them were always clear about that. But it was something deeper. It was as if they had found someone who understood their most intimate wounds without needing explanation. During filming, Bradley revealed to Gaga that his insecurity about his own voice came from childhood trauma. His father, who died in 2011, once said he had no ear for music, when Bradley, at age 12, said he wanted to be a singer. Those words haunted him for decades. Gaga, in turn, told him about nights when she would wake up screaming in pain because of fibromyalgia, and how music was the only thing that made her feel she was still alive. They discovered that Shallow wasn't just a song for a movie. It was the soundtrack of two people who had spent years drowning in their own insecurities and finally found someone willing to jump in the water with them. February 24th, 2019, Dolby Theatre, Los Angeles. Oscar night. Few people know what really happened backstage before the Shallow performance that had the whole world talking about the chemistry between Bradley and Gaga. 30 minutes before going on stage, Gaga was having a panic attack in the dressing room. Her hands were shaking so much she couldn't put on her earrings. Bradley, who was already ready, found her sitting on the floor, breathing with difficulty. "I can't do it," she said between sobs. "Everyone will realize I'm a fraud, that I don't deserve to be here." Bradley knelt beside her and held her hands. "Remember what you told me on the first day we met? You said music is the only language that doesn't lie. So let's go speak our language." But what no one knew is that before leaving the dressing room, they made a pact. They decided that during the song, they would pretend they were back in that first night in the studio at 2 a.m. with no one watching. They would sing to each other and forget there was an audience. That's why the performance was so intimate, so real, so dangerous. When the song ended and they looked at each other in that eternal silence, it wasn't acting. It was the mutual recognition of two people who had just exposed their souls in front of 30 million people and survived. The whole world interpreted that moment as romance, but in reality, it was something much rarer. It was two people who had found in music a way to communicate that went beyond words. In the days following the Oscar, the internet exploded with theories about a supposed romance between Bradley and Gaga. Tabloids created stories. Fans analyzed every look, every gesture, every breath of the performance. But what really happened was much more complex and, in a way, more beautiful than any Hollywood romance. 3 months after the Oscar ceremony, in an interview that almost never aired, Gaga revealed something that changed the entire narrative around Shallow. She was talking about the creative process when suddenly she stopped mid-sentence and said, "Do you want to know the truth about this song, the real truth?" The interviewer, surprised, just nodded. Shallow isn't about the movie, it never was. It's about two people who spent their entire lives hiding behind masks and suddenly found someone who made them want to take those masks off. The shallow part of the song isn't about water. It's about living a superficial life, afraid to really feel. She paused, looked directly at the camera and continued. "And when we sing, I'm off the deep end. Watch as I dive in." We're not talking about deep water. We're talking about finally having the courage to feel everything we spent years avoiding. The song is about the moment when you stop being afraid of drowning in your own feelings. Bradley, who was watching the interview from his home in New York, turned off the TV and called her immediately. When she answered, he said only, "Thank you for having the courage to dive." On the other end of the line, Gaga laughed through tears. "We did it, didn't we? We really managed to get out of the shallow end." Today, 5 years later, Shallow continues to play on radio stations around the world. But now you know that every time you hear that song, you're listening to much more than a movie soundtrack. You're listening to the exact moment when two people decided to stop being afraid to feel. You're listening to the courage of two wounded souls who found in music a way to heal scars they had carried for decades. Shallow isn't just a song. It's an anthem for all those who have ever been afraid of feeling too much, dreaming too much, living too much. The song that was born from two artists' fear of being vulnerable became a universal invitation to vulnerability. It reminds us that life's best moments happen when we stop staying in the shallow end of emotions and have the courage to dive into the unknown. Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper created more than a song. They created a collective confession. All of us at some point choose the surface because the depth seemed too scary, but Shallow is proof that life's most precious treasures only exist in the depths. And you? Are you still swimming in the shallow end of your own life? Or have you already had the courage to dive headfirst into your deepest dreams? If this story touched some forgotten part of your soul, it's because it needed to reach you today. Share in the comments, what is the shallow in your life that you're afraid to leave behind? And subscribe to the channel, but only if you're ready to discover the truths hidden behind the songs that marked your life. Because from now on, you'll never listen to Shallow the same way again.